Well, it's a great pleasure to be here and be with you again today, and always fun to come to Iowa, and always fun to speak to pork producers. I see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd. I think a lot of you have been to things that I've been at before, so I hope we don't repeat too much today. But what I find when I talk with people about human resource management issues is that none of this is ever rocket science. You know, most of the things that we talk about are just good, common sense things that we all need to be reminded on, we all need to refresh our course on, and we all need to just basically feel a lot more comfortable with. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go back to basics. We're going to really these are the things that I want you to feel comfortable that when you go home you can start doing immediately and hit the ground running with. So let's start with an obvious question. Who contributes to your business? Well, obviously you contribute to your business. You're a mover, you're a shaker, you're somebody who carries some weight. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. Also, you have your customers who contribute to your businesses. And then you have all these other people that go in through here. Your spouses, your neighbors, your children, your full-time employees, your part-time employees. All of these people, at the end of the day, make an impact. Otherwise, you wouldn't have them around. Correct? Correct. I always enjoy giving this presentation. I'm sure this won't happen in this crowd, but sometimes I'll show this slide to a group of farmers, a group of corn farmers, soybean farmers, somebody like that in Kansas where I'm living and working right now. And inevitably I'll ask the question, okay, who here farms or ranches entirely on your own? And I love doing this because inevitably there'll be some old crusty farmer that'll raise his hand and say, I do it entirely by myself, nobody helps me at all. And I love it when that happens because 9 times out of 10 his wife is sitting beside him. And her elbow ends up in his gut. And she'll say, well, you can just hold the flashlight yourself next time. You know, and so the moral of that particular story is nobody does this entirely on your own. We all call upon people, we all call upon employees, paid, unpaid, what have you, to help us out when the times get rough. Now, why are these working relationships important? Something brought you to the Pork Congress here today. There's lots of fun stuff going on upstairs. Something is making you take an hour and a half out of your life to sit here and listen to John and listen to me. There's some reason why these relationships are important to you. And I want to really examine the core of that. The first thing I would like to point out is you live with these people, correct? How many of you would say that your business is located in a metropolitan area? Probably not a lot of that going on in the swine industry. Now, what does that mean? It means that basically when we start talking about people who are going to work in your operations, whether you realize it or not, you live with these people, don't you? There's a rule of thumb that I like to say, the employee that you fire, you can pretty much guarantee the employee that you absolutely positively cannot get along with, that their children will end up stalled next to your children at the county fair. That's true? Correct? You're not going to get away from these folks. They're going to end up on the church board with you. They're going to be sitting behind you at the football game. You're never going to get away from these relationships. They're going to follow you for a very long time. And of course, the second reason this is important is because this is your livelihood. This is something, these are dollars and cents. Folks, I want to just remind you that agriculture in general, not necessarily specifically the swine industry, but agriculture is the second deadliest industry in this country. The only place you're more likely to die on the job is if you work in a coal mine. Now, that's a harsh reality that we face. And so when we start talking about hiring well-trained people, training them properly, getting the best possible people working side by side with us, is it important? You bet. Is it life and death? Some might even say that it is when you think about that statistic. And so this is your livelihood. You live with these people. This is a major reason why this is important. Now here's a big question. Who's competing for agricultural labor? Here's a pop quiz for you. It's after lunch. We've been sitting for a little while. Show of hands. Who has hired somebody into your operation that you've been involved in, either loosely or directly, with hiring somebody in the last year? Okay, that's interesting. Now, who here would say who you're competing with? Just start yelling them out. Who are you competing with for those people that you're recruiting? The university nearby? I'm sorry, a local dairy? Where else? Fast food service? Every community that we have represented in this room is going to have a different answer to that question. Because if, in my opinion, most labor markets are very, very local. Most people are not going to pack up and leave and move across the country for a job like we're talking about for a lot of these positions. And so most of the time, we're talking about a very, very localized labor market. And so one of the most important things I think we need to be asking ourselves when we start talking about competing for agricultural labor is we have to ask the big question, who's our competition? Is it the dairy down the road? Is it the local community college? Is it somebody who's going to be hiring for a plant or a manufacturing company? Are they mainly going into agriculture? Where I'm at in Kansas, we have a lot of people who can't keep help because everybody's going into the gas fields. And so, it's just a very, very unique type of thing to where you live. And so by asking that, we get a much better sense of what we have to do to compete against our individual competition. What brings employees and employers together? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I've spent a lot of time talking with different agricultural businesses about how they recruit people and how they keep people. And one of the things that I found is, again, it's not rocket science. Most people have the job that they have based on 3 different factors, and they're pretty dang easy. Number 1, compensation. Why do people work? They need money. They need a job. I don't know very many people who don't have to have a job to pay the bills every month. Actually, I do know 2. And I really can't stand being in the same room with them. They're just very lazy, worthless people, and I don't like them very much. And so I like people who have to work for a living. And so compensation, most people have to work. That's one of the things. But let's say, hypothetically, you've got 2 different farms. Let's say, for the sake of argument, they're both swine operations. You got Joe who lives on this place, and you've got his brother Larry who lives over here. So Joe and Larry, they're both, about 900 sow operations. They both are paying about the same. Do we care where we work? You do. You do? Why would you possibly care if they're paying about the same? Does it maybe, okay, let me add this into there. Okay, Joe is the nicest guy anybody in the county has ever met. Larry, people just hate him with the fire of 1,000 suns. Now do you care where you work? You better believe you care where you work. And that's where number 2 comes in there. Reputation. Compensation, I'm going to pay you to work. Okay, you're paying me to work. Now, where do I want to work? I'm so glad that John started us off this afternoon by listing that great statistic that really illustrates the core of what's going on in our industry. And that is, frankly, folks, in this country, we have more jobs than we've got people. How do we decide? How do people looking for jobs decide where they're going to go? Reputation and compensation. Where am I going to get paid what I deserve? And most importantly, where am I going to get treated the way I want to be treated? Who's a good employer? Who's not a good employer? And the final one there is situation, and we'll get to that a little bit in the end. Let's talk first about elements of a compensation package. Who here ever wonders or spends time worrying about your compensation package? Is this a big concern for some of us? Compensation packages, in my opinion, are things that are never really set in stone. They're never really finalized, but usually we kind of get in a routine and we kind of go with them. Some elements of compensation. I've got to sneeze here. No, I don't. Okay. Direct compensation, annual salary, hourly wage. This is money that goes from your pocket into their pocket. I'm going to give you money to work for me. Now, does that mean that every single dime that my employees cost me, they end up with? Nope. Because we've got to do these things right here, right? I'm going to push the button, hopefully. Okay, yeah. We've got to do things like Social Security and unemployment. We also, in a lot of cases, are going to do some voluntary things like health insurance or retirement packages or things like that. Who here is offering health insurance to your employees? So you guys know that health insurance has gotten really cheap lately? That's not the case. I'm just shocked and amazed. No, it's gotten way expensive. Health insurance has, doubled, tripled in some cases in the last, say, 5 or 6 years. So in a sense, have those employees been getting a raise? In a way, yeah, they're costing you more. Have they seen that money? No. And so that's one of the tricks of compensation, is that lots of times, just because your cost goes up doesn't necessarily mean their benefit goes up. And so that's, again, we go back to communication and we go back to a bunch of different things to try to make sure that they understand exactly what's going on. How do we develop a good compensation package? Well, this is a tough one, but I think that the most important thing to keep in mind with compensation is that right there. You have to understand the needs of your employees. Up until very, very recently, I had a position with Kansas State University. I've since left the university, and it's a very long story that we can get into later if you want to. No, it's wild kind of stuff. But anyhow, now I've got your interest piqued, don't I? You're like, what's she doing? But no, I'll talk about it later if you want me to. But I'm feeling very spastic today. I just had a Diet Coke, and I think it's gone. So anyhow, you've got to communicate with your employees. Number one, that's the single most important thing about employee compensation. Employee compensation, the success of those plans is going to depend upon that right there. How well you understand the needs of your employees. Because first of all, I just told you, all wages are local. Especially in an industry like this, all wages are local. In other words, if you've got an operation that you're on, let's say, the outskirts of Des Moines here, and there are lots of different employers vying for your labor force, you may have to pay $15 an hour maybe to get somebody. If you're way out in the middle of nowhere, maybe you are the best paying job in town, maybe you can pay $9 an hour and get somebody. See, that's very, very different just based on geography alone. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is all your different employees are going to have different things that make them tick. I don't know, do we have any hunters in the room? Anybody here like to hunt? In the state of Kansas, and I don't know about Iowa, but I'm assuming it's probably pretty much the same thing. In the state of Kansas, deer hunting is like, it's taken over for baseball for the national pastime. I mean, it's a huge deal. I was talking with somebody the other day that had a guy come in and kill a deer on him, and Cabela's paid $30,000 for the mount. Are you kidding me? I mean, that just blows my mind. But anyhow, I have had farmers in the state of Kansas that tell me, and I quote, Sarah, I don't deserve my employees. I can't pay them as much as they'd make in town. They've got to work in worse conditions than they'd have to work in the factory down the road. They're great, great, great employees. Anybody in the country would want to have these guys working for them, but they choose to work for me because I let them hunt on me. Are you kidding me? No, this is the thing. Because if these guys were working in town at the factory, where are they going to kill their deer that year? Nowhere. So they work for this guy. And now remember the second part of that was reputation. Chances are this guy's got a pretty good reputation too, wouldn't you say? It's probably, I didn't do that. That's not my fault. So it's just a matter of, looking at this and finding out what makes your individual employees tick. Also, it doesn't matter so much what your neighbors are paying. I don't really care so much what your neighbors are paying. It matters that you are willing to meet your employees' needs in a way that your neighbors can't meet your employees' needs. For example, this is a true story. I was doing my thesis research at Cornell University up in upstate New York. It's big-time dairy country. So I spent about 3 or 4 months in a rental car driving all around New England, which, by the way, if you want to know what a good summertime gig is, going around New England visiting dairy farms is not a bad way to do it because you get to meet some really nice people and see some really pretty country. And so I'm doing that, and I go to this one farm, and I'm sitting there talking, and everybody always complains about how they can't get like high school boys and boys right out of high school to come work on farms. You guys had that complaint before? Well, I know why, and it's because they're all working for this farm up in upstate New York. I mean, they had probably, 8 or 9 guys, probably aged 18. If any of them were over 21, I'd be surprised. And I'm talking to these guys, and I asked one of them, I said, do you consider this a career? And he thought about it for a little while, and he said, I'll probably do this until I get married. Okay, that's kind of an odd question, but this guy's been milking cows 24 hours a day for the past 6 months, so I'm going to let it slide. I said, why until you get married? And he said, well, when I get married, my wife will probably do my laundry. So, okay, it just keeps on getting weirder. And finally I said, well, why does that matter? He said, well, the lady that she and her husband runs this farm? I said, yeah. And he said, well, she does our laundry for us. Here we have an example, ladies and gentlemen, of a prime workforce who is not about to go someplace else where they can make more money because they're not about to start doing their own laundry. I say again, it doesn't really matter what your neighbors are willing to pay. It matters that you are able to meet your employees' needs. Find out what they need that you can give them that you can't get anywhere else. In other words, It's not about money. It's about meeting your employees' needs. Communicate with them. What are the details of your current package? What do you want out of a package? I've had employers who tell me, you know what, I spent months waiting through the red tape trying to set up a healthcare package. And I was going to spring it on my employees and surprise it, kind of a big ta-da moment. And I did that in the staff meeting, and they all just looked at me and said, you know what, we've all got wives that have jobs in town, and we got great health insurance. We don't really need that. Can we have this instead? Now, I'm not saying go home and stop carrying health insurance. That's not what I'm saying at all. I am saying that, you know, if you're going to start looking into some of these things and setting these things up, get your employees' feedback on it first. Make sure you're giving them the things that they really, truly need and want. Everything about your compensation package sends a message. We got to make sure we're using the right carrots. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, primarily what I'm talking about is we got to make sure that if we're going to reward a person for a certain behavior or a certain habit or a certain whatever, we got to make sure that that's the behavior or the habit that we want them to have. A good example of this, I think, is in bonuses. Anybody here doing bonuses or incentive plans? You like them? You hate them? Some people, who hates them? Who loves them? See, it's just, you never know. And it depends on the bonus plan. There are a lot of ways of doing it well, I'm told, and there are lots of ways of doing it badly. We got to make sure that whatever carrot we're dangling out there in front of our people leads them down the right road. I'll use the classic example. Those of you who have been in the swine industry for a while probably recognize this. Heck, you might have even made this mistake at some point in time. But let's say we've got an outfit that, you know what, they're really struggling with their pre-weaning mortality. They need more live pigs out the door. So they go to the farrowing manager and they say, okay, I'm going to give you a bonus. And I don't know your economics well, I apologize for that. But let's just pick a nice round number and say, I'm going to give you, the manager, a bonus of 50 cents a head for every live pig you send out the door. Is that a ludicrous number? Okay, cool, good me. So I'm going to give you 50 cents a head for every live pig you send out the door. Okay, goes great. What do you think happens after about, 3 or 4 weeks? Are they doing better? You bet. Pre-weaning mortality is way down. Owner is congratulating himself, patting himself on the back, saying, man, I am so smart. In the meantime, they got a new problem, though, don't they? What's happened to our death rate over in our nursery units? Way up. Oh my gosh, now I got to go to work on my nursery manager. All because they've given that incentive to that farrowing manager. He's walking up and down the aisle saying, you know, this little piggy isn't going to live till 5 o'clock. I better send him out and let him die on somebody else's floor. That's a true story that I've heard from our swine specialists many, many times. And so these are the things you got to watch. You got to make sure if you dangle a carrot out there in front of somebody that it's going to lead you where you want to go. If you say, I'm going to set up an incentive plan because our vet costs are way too high. We got to get our vet costs down. Are people going to stop vaccinating and stop doing vet cost things? You bet. Is that going to lead to what you want in the long run? Probably not. So you got to think these things through. Shifting gears here a little bit, let's talk about reputation now. In my opinion, this is harsh and this is cruel, and I apologize right up front for it. But the best way to get better employees is to be a better employer. You guys agree with that? People in your communities know. Because remember, we're talking about, for the most part, local labor pools. Our good friend and colleague, Dr. Bernie Irvin, likes to do a thing and talk about what he calls employers of choice. And Bernie always talks about when he's driving around the country and he stops in a little town to get gas and he's standing there checking out the gas. He likes to turn to the person behind the desk and say, so tell me, who's somebody good to work for in the community? Your goal as an employer in your small communities, in my opinion, is to be on that list that person behind the checkout stand says. Oh, you know, we got the manufacturer here. A lot of people work for the county. Oh, and there's a farm down the road that people just love working for. That's what you want to do. That will do your recruiting for you. And so how do we get the good reputation? I think there are 6 kind of basic steps here that we're going to go through very, very quickly. Communicate more. Use job descriptions, which in all honesty is kind of redundant because job descriptions are one of the ways you communicate. You got to recruit and hire the right people for the right positions. Not everybody is going to be a fit for every position. You've got to train those people, you've got to lay out the ground rules, and you've got to meet your employees' needs. Now, what do we mean when we talk about employee communication? I am a big believer in what I like to call the hazard lights theory. Now, what this is basically is I have in my life spent an awful lot of time driving down the road. As a K-State extension specialist, I spent a lot of time on little two-lane highways trying to get to the courthouse. And so what I find is that the more time, the more little two-lane roads you drive down, the more crazy things you see. And the more crazy things you see, the more likely it is that whoever is doing it is going to have their hazard lights on, and for some reason that makes it okay. So you got this guy, he's dragging this dead cow down the middle of the highway, and he's got his hazard lights on, and I'm thinking, here's a guy who's doing something really stupid, but he knows it, because he turned his hazard lights on, right? You can get by with that stuff if you've got your hazard lights on. Employee communication, in my opinion, is the exact same thing. Basically, it's your way of saying, I know I'm doing something really stupid. I know this is something that's going to get me in trouble. I know this is something I shouldn't be doing. But here's my reasons why. Here's why I have no other choice. Here's why I need you to help me with this. It's the same thing like, let's say, for example, you've got a great employee named Larry. Larry's been with you for forever. You've had health problems. You've had weather problems. You've had turnover problems. And Larry has been with you through it all. And this year, it's one of those years. And you go up to Larry, and one time you go up to Larry and you say, hey, Larry, I know you're supposed to have off Christmas, but not going to happen this year. I'll see you then. How's Larry going to take that? Probably not very well. Okay, flip side of that. You turn on the hazard light. You go up to Larry and say, Larry, you've been a great employee for me for a long time, and you know we couldn't get by without you around here, buddy. And I know you gave up a vacation this year. I know you missed your daughter's graduation. I know you worked Thanksgiving. I know you've done all this, but man, I don't know how we're going to get things done around here Christmas morning. If you could come in and help me out, that would really mean a lot to me. Are those two very different conversations? Do you see the difference that turning on the hazard lights can make? Explaining why you need to do stuff. Explaining how this is impacting that person. Explaining where you're coming from and why you're doing something stupid can really save you a lot of time and energy in the long run. The communication test. I really like this test. I would like for you all to go home and ask yourselves these 4 questions. I would love it if everybody within your organization could answer these 4 questions. First one right there, I know what to expect. This is big. This is really, really big stuff. Another example from the swine industry. I was visiting with an operation up in another state a few years ago. It had a whole lot of herd health problems, major herd health problems, and that the owner had made the decision, after a lot of counsel and a lot of debate, to go ahead and do a complete depop repop. I mean, they were going to go within about a 7-month period from 30,000 contaminated sows to 30,000 brand new sows. Is this a cheap endeavor? No. Is this an easy endeavor? No. This is a major, major career-defining undertaking that they were about to go through. And one of the things that they were most concerned about, and the reason I was brought into this process, was that right there. They said over and over again, our employees can handle anything, but it's going to be so stressful, it's going to be so time-consuming, the work is going to be so hard, and it's going to be so long until we see the benefit from it, that we want to make sure they don't have any unnecessary surprises. I know what to expect. I know that on Tuesday, trucks are going to roll up and they're going to load out our sows. I know that 10 days after that, this is going to happen. I know 18 days after that, this is going to happen. We've got it all mathed out so that throughout that process, our people know what's going on. That's very, very important. Whenever I call up a business, one of the red flags that goes off for me is when I'm talking to the receptionist or I'm talking to whoever answers the phone, and I hear the following. Hi, this is Sarah Fogleman from K-State. Can I speak with Larry? I'm into the name Larry today, aren't I? Okay, so can I speak with Larry? And whoever's on the other end of that phone just goes, I don't know what's going on. Nobody ever tells me anything. That is a red flag to me. That means that person isn't feeling valued. That person doesn't know what's going on. They aren't in the loop at all. And that brings us to the second one right there. I know what's going on. Again, when I was doing my thesis research at Cornell, I'd always call up the dairies, a week or two in advance. I'm going to be in the area on this day. Would that be okay for me to stop by? All the routine stuff. Some places I'd go, I'd get out of my little state car, I'd have my clipboard, I'd slam the door, and somebody'd meet me right there at the car. Hi, Sarah, I'm Joe, I'm the CAF manager. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Would you like to set up your computer in the break room? Everywhere I went, people knew who I was and what I was doing there. Other places, I'd go, I'd get out of my little state car, I'd have my clipboard, I'd slam the door, and people would just scatter. They didn't know if I was EPA or INS or what. They just knew I wasn't going to be their problem. They were going to go hide in the bathroom for 4 hours if that's what it took. But they weren't going to deal with me. Now, here's a question for you folks. Where would you rather work? Make sure people feel like they're in the loop, even if it doesn't pertain to them, especially if it doesn't pertain to them. Because all the time, I've seen this in businesses. I've seen this in my own workplace, where people come in, they show up and they go in and they're doing something in the break room or they're doing something in the conference room or whatever, and people look around and they're like, well, who is that? What are they doing here? I don't know. Nobody ever tells me anything. What does that do to your self-esteem? Nobody ever tells me anything. What does that do to your employee morale? Nobody ever tells me anything. What does that do to your sense of belonging? Nobody ever tells me anything. Make sure people are in the loop. The next thing, I know how I am doing. Another example from my thesis research. I'd go in, I'd talk to the manager or the owner for, 45 minutes or so. And, always at the end of the conversation, I'd leave them with one final question. I'd say, tell me something you do really great. 9 times out of 10, that manager would look at me and say, I give great feedback. I'd get up, I'd turn around, I'd walk into the milking parlor, and I'd stop the very first milker I saw, and I'd say, tell me something you wish your boss would do better. And they'd say, I wish I could get some feedback. True story. Time after time again. Was that manager lying to me? No, manager wasn't lying to me. But if you've got 50 employees and you give one piece of feedback every week, how long does it take for it to become that employee's turn again? About a year. And so do you see why you can't get too much employee feedback going on? I know how I am doing. And the next one there, the final one, I know how we are doing. I would dearly love it if everybody in your operation can make that statement. Because, and I hope I don't get too personal here, but I'm going to use the example of parents that are having difficulty in their relationship. They're maybe thinking about getting a divorce. Nobody wants to talk to the kids about it, though, because they don't want the kids to worry, right? Do the kids know what's going on? I bet you they probably do. Do the kids imagine that it's 10 times worse than it actually is? Yeah, I imagine they probably do. Same thing happens in our businesses. Oh, I think we're losing money. Oh, I bet they're going to lay people off. Oh, things are getting bad. Things are getting bad. Things are getting bad. Unless somebody actually explains the facts, people's imaginations are going to run away with them. And so I am a big proponent of the more we share business performance factors, herd performance factors, things like that. And let me tell you right now up front, the swine industry has a huge advantage when it comes to this stuff because you guys have got numbers. You've got numbers coming out the wazoo. You've quantified everything. So you can put those big markers on the wall, those big signs on the wall with a red marker and say, you know what, we're 80% to where we want to be for this year, and it's only July. Yay, hooray us. You can share that stuff that so many people can't share. And so that's a huge advantage. I would really advise you to take advantage of that. Step number 2 here very quickly. Use job descriptions. If you aren't currently using job descriptions, I'm a big, big advocate. And if you want to talk about that, why, we can talk about that when we start doing questions. Hire the right people for the right positions. I'm a firm believer that we have a lot of people out there that we try to squeeze them into the wrong position. That doesn't really 100% match where their talents are, that, you know what, that they'll get by doing this. They never get to thrive. We never get to take advantage of what they're really great at. And so the more we can get to know our employees, the more we can recruit and hire for unique skill sets or for unique personalities, which is probably a better even adjustment, I think the better off we're going to be in the long run. Because the worst thing that we can have is somebody who's just an amazing people person. Has got the gift of gab. I mean, this is the kind of person who should be out networking and doing all this stuff for us. But we've got them power washing stalls where they never see anybody ever. Is that person going to be happy in that job? No. They're the ones that are constantly broken down and they're looking for something, right? You can't, they go back, they power wash for 10 minutes. Oh, I really need a socket wrench. And they're out because they want to network with somebody. And so we got to make sure we get these people and get them in the right position. If you don't have time to do something right the first time, how are you going to find time to do it a second time? That's my mother's favorite cliche, and it's never more appropriate than when we talk about employee recruitment. I hate, and it's easy for me to say this with my nice, cushy, government job and stuff. But, folks, I honestly think that in the long run, we're better off holding a position open than we are hiring, quote-unquote, warm bodies. Most people that I know who hire warm bodies, it doesn't work out for them in the long run. And so take your time, hire somebody who has the chance to really to be successful in the long run. I think you'll save your time in the long run. Because hiring the person is not really the big challenge, in my opinion, in the process. The big challenge, where most employers drop the ball, is with this right there, training. Because let's face it, when do we hire people? When we have a whole lot of extra time? No, we hire people because we're out of time. There aren't enough hours in the day. Then let me ask you this. Is it faster to teach somebody to do something or to do it yourself? It's to do it yourself. And so we're hiring people, and then at a time when there isn't enough time, and then we're asking to do something that takes more time. That doesn't make any sense. And so we don't train them. We say, okay, I'll just do it myself. Did you see me do that? Okay, you got it. You're trained. And then lo and behold, 6 weeks later, that guy's not working out. I wonder why. And so then we're right back on that cycle again. And so taking the time, training as well as we can possibly train, I think is the most important thing we can do. Step 5, we got to lay out ground rules. We've got to make sure that we're never in a position where it looks like we're making up the rules as we go along. That is when you get into trouble, right there. Quick example. When I first moved to Kansas, I had a producer come up to me after a meeting one day, and he was a big wheat farmer in western Kansas. And he says, I got an employee compensation problem. And I said, okay, let's have it. Let's see if I can help you out. And he says, well, I really wanted to offer dental insurance to my employees. And so I checked around and I called around, and it was going to be way too expensive. So instead of offering dental insurance, I just told my guys, go ahead, take your families to the dentist, bring me the bill, and I'll pay it. Does anybody see where this could go terribly, terribly wrong? So needless to say, 2 weeks before wheat harvest, his number one employee, his go-to guy, the I can't get through this without you guy, comes up to him and says, oh, by the way, my daughter needs braces. Here's the first orthodontics bill. Talk about the proverbial rock and hard place. What am I going to do? I'm either going to pay this bill I didn't want to pay, or I'm going to tick off my number one employee right before my busiest time of year. Okay, here's a question for you, though. Is that a compensation problem? Or is it a communication problem? I would argue that it's a communication problem. Because he had one idea of what his policy or his new benefit was going to be. Employees had a totally different idea. And so by communicating, by using clearly defined policies and procedures and communicating those things to your employees, we're able to eliminate a lot more of those things. We don't ever want it to look like we're making up the rules as we go along. And finally, let's talk very quickly about situations. Most situations can't be controlled. Situations are the examples of your number one employee that you've had with you for forever, started working with you when he was 15 years old and coming after school. Lo and behold, he just got accepted to vet school. We're going to lose him. Is that a bad thing? No, we're proud of that kid, aren't we? We're really, really proud. And you know what? With that kind of reputation and building people up like that, we're going to find another one just like him if we do that. I'll never forget it. Bernie Irvin and I were in Nebraska a few years ago. We were out in the sandhills of Nebraska, sitting having a steak dinner one night with this young couple, and really, really cool people. They had four boys, ages, I think the oldest one at the time was like a junior in high school, all the way down to like a 6th grader. And they were talking about, their ranch and their operation, and they were just very, very cool, energetic people. And he turned to me and said something I'll never forget. He said, yeah, we just lost our best employee last week, and boy, we couldn't be happier about it. Is this something I'm used to hearing? No. And I said, okay, you've got to explain what's going on here. And he said, well, yeah, this is this young man. He's from back east. He didn't have any ranching experience whatsoever, but he always wanted to be a cowboy. So he came out here, and you know what? We get a lot of those guys, and most of them don't work out, but this guy was really great, and he's been with us for a long time. And a widow lady in the neighboring county had a ranch manager position open. And we told him, we said, you have to take it. You have to go. And he said, you know what? We knew that was the right thing because he would have stayed with us forever. We got 4 boys that are coming back to the ranch. My wife and I, we're still real young. This guy could have been our hired hand for the rest of his life. Or he can go next door, be our colleague and our co-worker in the industry, run his own operation, and really become the person that we know he's capable of being. We lost our best employee last week, and we couldn't be happier about it. And so when you think about that, when you think about you're not going to keep everybody. You're going to have some turnover. Some degree of turnover is absolutely, positively wonderful in your operation. I would love it if every single one of you have a bunch of guys at home right now power washing that are going to end up being the leaders in the industry someday. Because you know what? If you've got that reputation in your community of being somebody who instills that kind of leadership and that kind of training, you're never going to have a turnover problem because you're going to have somebody wanting that position. And so situations can't be controlled. You just got to work with them. In conclusion, finding and keeping quality employees has probably never been more difficult. With compensation, you got to be more concerned about what the employees want than with what your neighbors are paying. Promote yourself as a valuable employer and understand that when situations change, so do work relationships.